deep. Swinging in my hammock, I fell asleep. I dreamed a dream, and I thought it true, concerning Franklin and his gallant crew. With 100 seamen he sailed away to the frozen ocean in the month of May, to seek a passage around the pole, where we poor sailors do sometimes go. Through cruel hardships they vainly strove. The ship on mountains of ice was drove. Only the Eskimo with his skin canoe was the only one that ever came through. In Baffin Bay where the whalefish blow, the fate of Franklin no man may know. The fate of Franklin no tongue can tell. Lord Franklin with his seamen do dwell. So my burden it gives me pain for my long lost Franklin. I would cross the main. 10,000 pounds would I freely give to say on earth that my Franklin do live. Bound one night on the deep. Swinging in my hammock I fell asleep. I dreamed a dream and I thought it true, concerning Franklin and his gallant crew.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to Exe Files on Phonic FM. We've got a very special guest today. We've got Jackie Tonks, Bigfoot Hunter, and she'll be talking about some of her amazing adventures and some of the current research on Bigfoot and other Bigfoot-related issues. Welcome, Jackie.
Hi.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that song that we just heard? Because the music tonight is all Jackie's choice, so tell us a little bit about Lord Franklin.
Yeah, that's an interpretation by Nick Hennessy of the Lord Franklin, quite famous folk song on the album A Rare Hunger. It's just obviously, you know, anybody looking for Bigfoot has got to be into exploration and looking for the unknown, really. And I think that for obviously Franklin didn't do too well, and very sad story, but that's what exploration's all about.
I don't really know the story of Lord Franklin.
He was basically an explorer from around Victorian times who went looking for the North Passage, I think it was, in
the Northwest Passage.
The North Passage in Canada, and he sadly sort of died finding it. It's a real horrific stories.
Is he the first explorer of the Northwest Passage? I think I'm sort of remembering him.
Yeah. He was the the first one, and sadly it was a horrible fate, and they ended up with cannibalizing, and he was disgraced in Victorian society. But it was just like he's an inspiration, although he wasn't successful. And people like Livingstone and Stanley as well. As a child, I always looked at the explorers, and I always wanted to be a bit of a female Livingstone, and I saw the Arthur C. Clarke series, A Mysterious World, and I was fascinated by everything from the unknown, and I think that's what's got me into this originally. Bigfooting. So.
Cool. Well, very nice choice. Very melodic music. We're going to go into a little bit of paranormal news. Unfortunately, as you may have noticed, Richard Freeman, the co-host of the show, is not here again this week. He was unavoidably detained after the weird weekend last week, so he will be back, though. Fear not. And hopefully it's not because of something weird that happened at the weird weekend. Jackie, you were there.
It was very weird, yes.
It was very weird. I was thinking he might have disappeared into a black hole or another dimension and not been able to come back out or something, but no, it's nothing quite like that. But he will be back next week, I believe, and will be able to present the news himself. So in his absence, I'm going to go over a little bit of the paranormal news from the current week. And this is some of the news that Richard actually sent to me. So the first article is from Live Science, and we've got ghostly particles from outer space detected in Antarctica. Apparently buried deep in the Antarctic ice, an observatory has spotted ghostly, nearly maskless particles coming from inside our galaxy and points beyond the Milky Way. Finding these cosmic neutrinos not only confirms their existence, but also sheds a light on the origins of the cosmic rays, the researchers said. This is the Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory, which is made up of 86 shafts dug 8,000 feet into the ice near the South Pole. The shafts are equipped with detectors that look for the telltale light from high-energy particles plowing through the surrounding ice. So basically, these neutrinos, which have very little mass, zip through matter so easily that a block of lead a light year across wouldn't stop them. These elusive particles come from high-energy sources, exploding stars, black holes, and galactic cores among them. So the Ice Cube project found neutrinos from outside our galaxy in 2013, but to confirm that detection, the researchers, led by a team at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, interesting place, Wisconsin, lots of cool stuff happening there, had to make sure these neutrinos weren't coming from sources within our own galaxy, such as from the sun. So to do so, they looked for neutrinos with similar energies that were coming from all directions at the same rate, meaning they are independent of the Earth's rotation and orbit around the sun. And only that can, the only way that can happen is if the source is outside the galaxy. So, I don't know, very interesting stuff, as usual, from Antarctica, kind of a mysterious place. News story this week. Next story. This is a new book released about, and this is from Wales Online, a Welsh source, a Welsh newspaper. The Spying Welsh Lord, this is the headline, His Occult Secrets and the Dancing Kangaroo. And this is Lord Tredegar. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. Because
I'm not too sure. Yeah.
I really know too much about him. Lord Tredegar Evan Morgan, who was the Pope's right-hand man, a practicing occultist, a spy, and fantasist. His wild society parties attracted everyone from H.G. Wells to high-profile Nazis, all of whom he'd entertained by dancing with his pet kangaroo.
Sounds bizarre.
I know, very bizarre. I was, wondering, who is this mystery man? Because I don't know. I've heard of him before, but I don't know too much about him. So this is a new book out. But now a book about the notorious Lord Tredegar Evan Morgan, entitled Hush Hush, The Particular Career of Lord Tredegar, aims to tell his outrageous story in full for the first time.
Sounds intriguing.
Yeah, definitely. It's good to get these kinds of stories out there about occultists and various people from history which we might not have known that much about. Here's a quote here about Crowley and his associations with Aleister Crowley. He'd met and become friends with the infamous occultist Aleister Crowley, Aleister the Great Beast Crowley, in Paris in the 1920s, as presumably did many other people. In fact, Crowley called him adept of adepts. Evan also went by the name the Black Monk, although you couldn't fail to spot him with his robes on because that big beak of a nose would always poke out from underneath his cowl. So that's a quote from
Of course, Alistair Crowley's got connections as well with another cryptid, the Loch Ness Monster. And
oh, really?
he was supposed
that's
to,
right, yes.
Yeah,
yeah, that's right.
supposed to have conjured it out of the water, but we're not too sure where that's... But he did have a property on the side of Loch Ness.
That's right, yeah. What's it called? I can't remember the name of it now, but probably will come to me at the end of the show.
I can't remember.
It was bought by Robert Plant, this mansion where he did the Abermaelin conjuration, amongst other magic. So a new book out, and last little news item. Where is it? Yes, this was, this is weirdly, and this is what Richard sent me, and he actually sent me weirdly 2 articles from the Daily Mail. Like, I didn't really take Richard for a Daily Mail reader, but this is like an
definitely
article.
not. No.
No, I know, but this is the second article that Richard sent me this week. That the source is actually the Daily Mail.
He must have found it on a train, I think.
I don't know. But scientists discover sacred sinkhole under Mayan pyramid. The cenote, or natural sinkhole, stretches 114 feet long and is up to 65 feet deep. It is capped by 13 feet of limestone, which is gradually being washed away. Experts have found it is connected to other caverns and lakes in the area. They say it has deep religious significance to the Mayan culture. So this is a fairly recent discovery. They've discovered this giant sinkhole.
That's not the one that the guy fell down recently, is it? There's quite a few. Because, I mean, there's one at Exmouth Beach the other day.
Well, that's why I thought this was interesting.
A bit of a theme, doesn't it?
Well, that's why I wanted to do this story, because I thought Exmouth has got like this reappearing sinkhole.
Its own sinkhole.
Yeah, and it's just come back. It's come back 3 times now, apparently.
Yeah.
Which is apparently it was shooting out snails, and I thought it was really mysterious. And I wanted to go look at it, and I haven't been down there yet.
No, I've not been down there yet, despite working there at the moment.
But I do intend to. But you see, I was there actually the day before the sinkhole reappeared. So, I was there, and then like a day later, a friend of mine...
You could have been standing there.
I was, because actually I like that area. It's Orcombe Point, and I like swimming there, and so that's one of the places which I actually go. And so I was shocked to hear the sinkhole at Orcombe Point. That's exactly where I go. But no, this is a recent discovery where they've discovered basically a massive sinkhole underneath this Mayan pyramid, and they believe that the sinkhole had some sort of religious significance, and that it was there, like the pyramid was purposely built over this temple. And this sort of relates a little bit to your studies, because archaeologists have discovered this is the temple of Kukulkan, which was built by the Maya around 1,000 years ago to worship a snake god, which has a sinkhole beneath it. So they believe it has something to do with the worship of this snake god. And it was just very interesting. Kukulkan is a Mayan snake. Yes, Kukulkan is a Mayan snake deity, or a feathered serpent who grew up inside the cave before emerging in an earthquake.
There's a lot of serpent cults throughout the world, isn't there? It's quite a thing that reoccurs.
Oh, it's very ancient.
There's even query that the Loch Ness Monster is something to do with that, and also Northumbria, there's some sort of serpent cult thing that was going on up there. They even found sort of trussed up bodies in the water up to about the 1930s that were meant to be sacrifices. It's quite scary, really, to think that was
very strange.
Going on so late.
Yeah, well, of course,
meant to be a Viking sort of connected thing. But
there's the Druids, of course, and the worship of snakes, and ancient Egypt, India. It's quite pervasive. But this is a new discovery. This giant sinkhole underneath this temple, and they're just wondering what it's all about. So, thank you, Daily Mail, for letting us know. So let's talk to you, Jackie, about some of your research. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go into one of your musical choices. So tell us, why did you get into Bigfoot?
Well, from the series, I'll say Clark's Mysterious World, there's a sort of iconic sort of patty shot to the Bigfoot sort of walking across the creek bed. I think most people know that. They can see it on YouTube if they haven't. And, at the time, people thought it was a man in a suit, and now there's a lot of evidence that it isn't a man in a suit. And then friends of mine, Adam Davies and Andrew Sanderson, or Sandy as we call him, from Extreme Expeditions, Adam Davies is a guy you might be familiar with from the Monster Quest programs and the Russian Bigfoot programs.
Yes.
Sky invited me to go to sort of Washington State looking for Bigfoot, because they were at the time running an expedition team, regularly going to look for cryptids. And at the time, I was really sceptical. I thought, come on, this is North America. This is, highly populated place. There's no way something like that's walking around. But I was really interested in seeing bears and cougars. And I thought, great, I'll go along. But I really don't believe, this thing exists, probably 1% chance.
So how long have you been hunting Bigfoot? Like, how long have you been interested?
This was about 3.5, 4 years ago when I first went. I got invited out by them, and I was really sceptical, as I said. And then we got to the site in Washington State, campsite. There was other people around, but it was fairly remote. And then the lady who took us out, Laurie, she sort of started hitting trees with sticks, and suddenly there was this instant, just sort of, we got what we had to control for the echo, obviously, because we're in a valley, but it came back, and we think, oh, that's a bit strange.
That's really creepy.
Yeah, it was quite strange.
Yeah.
And within 2 days we got footprints, which were pretty impressive, actually. You could tell they weren't faked. There's various ways you check they're not faked, especially if they're not too regular, and the sort of depth of them, because it's quite, you'd have to get a special mechanical device to get them really deep. And you look at if there's variation, like there would if you're walking along, you're going to be sometimes slightly on the side of your foot. And they were really impressive, and by this time I thought, hang on, this is getting a bit strange. And then we had a camera trap up, and then about 3-4 days in, we got what we don't know. I mean, it could be the back of a Bigfoot. If you put in YouTube, you go to Extreme Expeditions Bigfoot, we're not too sure, but we're pretty sure it isn't one of us. It's going to be a person or an ape, or hominid, whatever you think Bigfoot is. But it freaked us out to the point we were all pretty scared. We were going to the toilet in two, so it was that bad. These big tough blokes like, "Could you go to the toilet with me?" But it was pretty scary, really, and that freaked me out. And on the last day, I actually heard the howl, which at the time I'm
heard
thinking,
about this.
that? And it is really unpleasant. It's really scary. I got the back end of it. I was stood in the water leak washing, and I could suddenly hear it coming down, echoing down the valley, and it is quite scary. And then we were interviewing people. There was a lot of evidence. Loads of people's family had seen it, or they'd seen it, and I was starting to get quite convinced then.
So what is it? I mean, what is the evidence? I've seen some sort of documentaries, etc. What is like the current best evidence for outside of eyewitness testimony?
I mean, there's a guy, Professor Jeff Meldrum, who's he's an expert on primate locomotion. He's an anthropologist from, I think it's Ohio State University in America, and he's looked at the footprints, and they actually showed dermal ridges, which is like like fingerprints on your feet, and you obviously got they're called fingerprints on your hands.
Didn't he claim that it was sort of not a human but not an ape either?
He's got two theories. One, that it's a descendant of Gigantopithecus, which was a giant ape that's shown to have lived in China. We just know it from teeth and a bit of a jawbone, but they can tell from the jawbone it was upright standing, and it was probably sort of 8 to 10 feet. And also Jeff Meldrum's theory, though, is it could be Homo erectus robustus, which is a very chunky form of Homo erectus, which was a hominid, as sometimes people call them. And on the second trip, I was fortunate enough to see two things run across the road, and my brain at the time couldn't really cope with it. I was sort of rationalising they were humans in a very strange all-in-one pull-on overall, bare feet, and they looked like a really ugly Xavier Bardem, to be quite frank, but they had really deep brow ridges, and they weren't acting like humans, and they were running incredibly fast, about 30 miles an hour. And then they hesitated, and we got a good look at the face, and it took me about 3 days to come to terms with it. My friend trying to convince me, but I now realise I'm pretty sure they weren't 100%. They weren't human, and I'm pretty sure they probably were Bigfoot, and they did look more like, I would say, a Homo erectus than a gorilla. They were a lot more human-like than I expected, which is quite shocking.
So yeah, it just seems like most of the evidence for Bigfoot, not that I disbelieve in it, I mean, as I was saying earlier to you, I've spent quite a lot of time, I'm a Canadian, I've spent quite a lot of time in the Canadian wilderness up where there's, nobody, literally nobody, no roads, no houses, and also in the States. And I know that those forests are very vast, very, very wild. They are just massive. And there's no question to me in my mind that something could be living in there which nobody has seen before. It's kind of like
that's the thing. They are absolutely vast. I mean, that's when I went to America, realised how vast they are. I mean, the second trip, Tom Cantrell, who's quite a famous Bigfooter, is also my mentor, really. He's my main teacher, really, about Bigfoot. He took me down there, and the logging road was 40 miles long.
Yeah.
I mean, just massive. And we were down there for 10 days, and we saw one other group of people on the road. I mean, it was completely
Well, then there's
isolated.
places where the logging road just ends, and there's no more logging roads. The forest is much, much vaster. There's places where there's no logging sort of allowed because you sort of can't even get there, And of course, there's protected trees, old growth trees and stuff like that, which they're not allowed to cut down. So I do believe that something could exist which we haven't seen. It's just that all the evidence so far is kind of inconclusive.
Well, that's it. And I think you get these very blurry shots, and I think it's not helped by various techniques people use to try to collect images. Particularly, they're using automatic focus camcorders, which can't cope in woodland. Your lens is going all, it just can't focus. You need a manual focus. Also, as people say, when you first see one, this is an animal that is averagely about 7.5 to 8 feet. The males can even get to 10, supposedly, and they're absolutely gigantic. I mean, what I saw had the shoulders on it were absolutely massive. I rationalised in my brain it was guys who got this massive rucksack under this all-in-one suit they're wearing, and then I realised, but they're absolutely massive, the shoulders on them. If you see something like that's about 8 foot plus tall with those sort of shoulders coming toward you, you're not going to be holding your camera still. You're going to be absolutely terrified, and this is what most people say, and they are. They do eat meat. They're omnivores, but they do eat meat, and there's Native American legends of them, sort of hunting people down. So, and that's very interesting about the Native American stories, really, because that almost every tribe's got its own legends. Some of them say Bigfoot are friendly, some say they say cannibals. Cannibal giants is a common one.
This is something I'm very interested in, the origin of the mythology of Bigfoot, because it's quite old. It's not like it just suddenly started in the 50s when people started to film it.
I mean, there's very old cave paintings in, I think it's a Tool Indian reservation in central California, that show a family of Bigfoot next to, animals that we know exist, like deer and that the First Nation people there say that that they don't, that area, they don't paint mythical animals. That if what's on that wall is going to be a real animal, and they do exactly look like what people are reporting now, which is quite scary, really. When you look at them, you think, whoa. And there's also some amazing masks that are really old. Now, this was well before Native Americans would have likely seen monkeys. I mean, they could have been brought over on boats, but the North America, they're not known, and they look really accurate. They do look like a gorilla type thing, so that's even more evidence, really. And there's all these legends, most Native Americans, if you speak to them who do spend time in the forest, will say these are real animals. They're not. Some of them will say there's a spiritual dimension to them, but they'll say they are real.
Yeah, I have seen a few people in some of the documentaries saying that there is a spiritual dimension to them, and that they're magical in some way. Or
there's all sorts of. I mean, I think some of that's explained by the fact they're supposed to be very stealthy, and there's something called tree peeking that they do, which and they can they're very intelligent animals by the sound of it, and they quickly get back into the undergrowth and disappear, as it were. And I think that can give a dimension that they're magical animals, then shape shift. But I think they're just very fast, and they're also very stealthy and very intelligent. So, and I think they're bright enough to stay away from us. And I think that can give a false impression, really. And they're very well camouflaged as well. People tell me, our friend Tom's seen them absolutely loads of times, and he said you can be right by one and you think it's a tree until it moves. That they are very, they do really blend in.
It'll be very interesting when eventually we actually find them. It'll be pretty incredible discovery to actually when we find like a carcass or something. Or
that's it. But the likelihood is we probably won't find a carcass unless one, because cougars. I think there's only about one almost whole carcass. There's not many anyway. I know that. I think because basically the scavengers get it very, very quick. The acidic environment of the woods there, breaks down bones extremely quickly. So I'm not surprised we haven't found any bones, because you
don't find bones
even
of
chimpanzees in the wild. Jane Goodall said you hardly ever find remains, really, just fragments.
I think that's true. My time that I've spent up in the wilderness, I've never heard of anyone talking about finding like a bear bear bones, deer bones just in the woods. You just don't. You might find a bone. You might find, I found mainly fur, like sort of remnants of fur.
Yeah, there are supposed samples of, because they can't be compared to a known animal, obviously, but there are what seems to be Bigfoot hairs that people looked at and said that does look like a primate hair. That looks like a human hair, but not quite, so there is that evidence. And the footprints, I think, are one of the best pieces of evidence. There are reasonable bits of film, and I now think the patty shot is real. I'm going to have a chance to chat to Bob Gimlin, who is one of the people that go on the camera. John Patterson sadly died of cancer in the 70s, but Bob Gimlin is still alive and a very fit, I think, 82-year-old who still rodeo rides. But I'm going to have a chance to actually talk to him in November at the Sasquatch Summit in Washington State. So, that will be a great opportunity, really, to interview him about that.
Sounds great. Let's go into one of your next songs. We have a Song of the U. Would you like to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, that's by Nigel Shaw, a friend of mine who lives on Dartmoor, and it's from Dartmoor Roundhouse album. And Nigel's one of the top Native American flute players in the country. He's an Englishman, but he's amazing Native American flute. And obviously we've just been talking about the Native American culture, so I thought that would be quite an appropriate one.
Okay, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes with Jackie Tonks on Exe Files on Phonic FM 106.8. Okay, and we're back on Phonic FM 106.8. This is Exe Files. This is your host, Alison Rockbrand. Richard Freeman is sadly not with us tonight. He has been unavoidably detained. Something weird has happened to him after the weird weekend. But he will be back next week, and we are here with our special guest, Jackie Tonks, Bigfoot Hunter. So, Jackie, tell us a little bit about your own experiences with Bigfoot, and also how is Bigfoot hunted? What are the techniques that are being used to track this down and photograph it or videotape it?
Well, the techniques people used to do was sort of go around in amazing camouflage gear, and that can prove very expensive if you have all the top kit, and try to be as stealthy as possible and sort of walk around woodland for ages. And they're now realising that doesn't always work, because the animal's very bright, it can smell and can hear you coming, and it just tends to get out of the way. And the sort of the present techniques they use they're trying to do, people doing habituation projects like you do with mountain gorillas. Mountain gorillas, you sort of camp quite distance away, and then you get closer and closer and closer. You put, with and with the Bigfoot, they're putting sort of food offerings and trying to get them used to people. And there's also some people reckon they're actually coming into the gardens, they're feeding them. I haven't seen this yet, but I've had some pretty good accounts, some honest people who said they have managed to do this, and they've got them to come quite close. There is also there's a thing they joke about. You don't go looking for Bigfoot; it comes to you. And I think the best way is often just get in an area where Bigfoot's around. And that's a popular spot for seeing it, and just sit there and wait. They are meant to be nocturnal. I saw the ones I saw were about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was quite light. My friend Tom's seen most of his in the daylight. Obviously they're easy to spot then, but they are meant to be nocturnal. But but there is this sort of thing. Some people do tree knocking, as you've probably seen on the Find a Bigfoot program, and whoops. And some people do the howls. A friend, Tom Cantrell, said that's not the way to do it, because you're actually marking your territory, and they're more likely to stay away from you, because you're saying, this is my territory, stay away, and you're less likely to see them. You might get some whoops back, and we did get the last time I went to Northern California. I was a mile from Bluff Creek, where the very famous patty shot was taken, which is where a mile from there, where I saw the two, what I presume were Bigfoot, running across the road. We were doing whoops, and we did get them back, which was quite cool. Quite scary as well, because you suddenly realise there were quite a few Bigfoot around, and they're rather large. And there's obviously, when people go tracking them and look for signs as well, they obviously look for the footprints. Sometimes you might just get a heel. They also look for things like bark. The bark's been pulled off with obviously fingers instead of claws, because you can spot where a bear's been pulling off bark. With a Bigfoot, you can actually see it's been fingers pulling it down, and often the height's quite high. You see it from about 8 foot up plus. So that's an indication. And also they make supposed nests, which are like branches. They all gather together, sometimes as bits of bush as bedding, and also these almost teepee type arrangements, which I have actually seen some of those, which are quite impressive.
I saw one interesting experiment, which was a bunch of women who went out thinking like an all-female expedition, thinking that Bigfoot was more likely to come around if it was all women without men.
Well, that's it, yeah. I mean, the Native Americans say they are attracted to women, and there's abduction stories. Gorillas, and I have actually seen this with the mountain gorilla, will try it on with human women, and orangutans will be interested in women. So it's not that remote an idea that Bigfoot would be interested in carrying away a woman. There's a lot of Native American legends about that, and them having children with that's very unlikely, because they're two genetically diverse species. But that does happen. But these women do seem to have a lot of success, because I think the Bigfoot, there's less testosterone smell, and they seem to be less threatening. That they do seem to get a lot of success. Of course, there's typical putting out the camera trap, seeing whether you get successful. There's a funny phenomena where people say they malfunction and they don't get the shot, whether there is some paranormal thing, they're letting off some energy. There's various theories, or some people say it's just because they don't exist, you're not going to get the shot. But people get other things and then the camera trap will malfunction. We've not had that happen, but a lot of people say they do. Whether they're truthful, you don't know really. But
so what are some of your other expeditions?
I've also in April I was actually in Nepal I was supposed to be there to help film a documentary on shamanism. Sadly, the earthquake hit, as you know, in April.
That's right,
very, very sad situation. And if anybody can donate, they're obviously still desperate for money. There was an awful lot of damage, and there's an awful lot per people there. But when I was there, actually, just before the earthquake, I went around interviewing people about Yeti sightings, and I didn't think I'd get that many, and it was amazing how many I was getting. I was speaking to my friend's brother, Hom, who's has an expedition company in Nepal, and he was saying that when he was near the Annapurna mountain, where the Annapurna circuit, people can do this actually, there's a mountain there, they were coming out from the one side, and his guides came back absolutely hysterical, saying that a giant man monkey, really large, has thrown boulders at them about 2-3 feet across, which he said they were absolutely terrified. They were crying, and he said, "Oh, it's just a small monkey." And they said, "No, really big monkey without tail." So that was quite interesting. There's also a report of a smaller one that's about sort of 4 foot odd. There's supposed to be 3 types. There's a really large one that can get to 10-12 feet, and which I think it basically is the same as Bigfoot, but you've got the New World and the Old World version. They're described as having a conical head, very, very similar animal. But there's supposed to be these 2 medium-sized and a small-sized one as well, which was all quite intriguing.
Okay, do you want to talk about the next song?
Yeah, I chose this because there's also there are Bigfoot-type creatures all over the world, and the Almasti, or the Almas, is the one that's Mongolia in Russia area, and that's supposed to be more like hominid as well, Homo erectus possibly, and I've always had a fascination with the Mongolian culture, and that's one of the places I really do want to go. So I've chosen
this is the Skeleton Lords.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Okay. I'm jumping ahead here. Yeah,
Mongolia's a little bit later.
Folks, jumping ahead. Yeah. This is from an album by my friend Brian Abbott, and this obviously relates to the Nepal, and obviously they've got this lovely image in Nepal of the sort of dancing, sort of laughing skeleton, and as I did sort of narrowly escape things in Nepal, and I laughed death and sort of death in the face. It's sort of this Skeleton Lord track I thought was the ideal next track.
Okay, excellent. Let's have a listen. Hello, welcome back. This is Exe Files on Phonic FM 106.8. I'm here with Jackie Tonks, Bigfoot Hunter. Jackie, why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the other hominids, Yeti and other ape-type beings?
Yeah, well, as I said, there's the Yeti. There's meant to be 3 types of Yeti in the Himalaya. Very large one, up to 12 feet, and then there's sort of medium-sized one and a smaller one. As I said, the larger one is meant to be almost identical to Bigfoot and not as aggressive as the so-called medium-sized one, which is meant to be very, very aggressive, that locals particularly fear. I think they are, the impression I'm getting, they're very, very rare now and possibly extinct in the Himalayas, but you do get a lot of the relics, unfortunately, have turned out to be not real. There's been suggestions that some of them were actually stolen and replaced by Westerners. But the people of Nepal, and the monks who often describe seeing these in the remote regions tend to be very, very honest people. And I'm pretty sure there was something there at some point, if not now. But the reports I've got are relatively recent. I think one was about 2001, one was about 2010. So there does seem to be something still around, which is quite exciting. And I'm hoping to do an expedition to then next year, hopefully. There's other things as well. As I said, the Russian almasty, a more primitive ape creature, a sort of hominid. That again is even meant to use tools and interact with people. There's stories in the Caucasus Mountains of it, having an exchange deal with people and leaving out food and leave them skins and they leave it food. Again, I think it's probably pretty rare now, although Richard, I'm sure, will tell you about his adventure looking for it in the Caucasus Mountains. There's also the orang pendek. Again, Richard, the host, I'm sure will be back soon. He's an expert on the orang pendek, which is a Sumatra version, which is a lot smaller than Bigfoot and the Yeti, probably about 3.5-4 feet. But there's an awful lot of evidence that exists now. They've even got some... they've done some DNA analysis that was not brilliant, but it came out as unknown high primate, orang but not orang, and it's been seen by quite a few people. I know people who've seen it. Debbie Marta, Dave Archer, a friend of mine, he's seen it. Debbie Marta, the conservation officer, I think she's seen it about 4 times now.
When you say they've seen it, where have they seen it?
That was in the Sumatra and the Kerinci Semblat, I think it is, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, park. So it's definitely there, really. It's a matter of time, sort of finding, getting a good shot of that, getting good DNA and getting the proof. And of course, if that's found, of course, we can, the area that it's found in, it is conservation area, but it's been encroached on very much by palm plantations, so it needs to be protected, really, and the quicker we find it, the better. And of course, you've got the Homo florensis, the little hobbit ape, and if you look back, I think the legends again are a very good indicator, because the locals did talk about these creatures for years and nobody believed them, and now they have actually found the bones. So I think the same with Bigfoot. I think hopefully at some point there's going to be evidence, and people looking for it like me and other people we know will suddenly be believed. So hopefully that will happen one day.
So what's your next move then? What's your next expedition?
I'm not too sure. I think if we get things going and obviously things settle down in Nepal, because I hear there are still tremors there, it's a bit precarious still. Hopefully a Yeti expedition. I am also planning in November to go to the Sasquatch Summit, and I have also planned at that time to go to look at some of these so-called habituation sites to see whether anything turns up. People who are supposed to be habituating the Bigfoot and drawing them with the food, so that could be quite interesting, and that's in the Olympic Peninsula. So Washington State. So that could be quite, and obviously I'll get to meet some people like Professor Jeff Meldrum and Bob Gimlin. So that will be really exciting, really, and try to make some more contacts there.
So if people want to find out more about Bigfoot, what sort of research can you recommend? Do you have any recommendations for instance, websites? So we were talking about films earlier as well.
Yeah, I mean the websites are Bigfoot Research Organisation, the BFRO. That's the one that the sort of people from Finding Bigfoot were from. There's a lot of information on there. That's one of the best sites. I recommend books and website. David Polides, an ex-police detective who's been investigating Bigfoot, and he went round with top forensic artist who was sort of doing the pictures, and the consistency, that it was just amazing. They were just coming up with exactly the same images, and that's one thing you look for. Consistency. Really, are people describing the same animal? There's the movies. No, it's a bit cheesy, but Beast of Boggy Creek, that is actually a really good movie. It gives a good description of Bigfoot. That's more about the skunk ape, which is supposed to be a subspecies of Bigfoot that's not meant to be a lot more aggressive, but it is like a spoof documentary, but it is actually good, and there's some real people in it who actually saw it acting. There's, I think, the Letters from the Big Man. That's quite difficult to get hold of, but you might be able to get it on a stream. If you go on the internet, is a very authentic Bigfoot movie. It's a bit of a love story as well, but it's actually quite accurate about the tree-peeking behaviours. There's some other ones, there's horror ones, like there's a new one, Willow Creek, that's come out. I think it's good entertainment, but I don't think Bigfoot are that aggressive. There is quite a lot of good stuff out there, but there's also a lot of inaccurate, things about them being highly aggressive. I think they're like most things, like gorillas. If you keep your distance and you do the right things, there's no evidence that, there's occasional stories, but none of them had been terribly validated. It tends to warn people and scare people by shaking bushes as evidence, but I think it's generally quite placid.
Well, thank you very much, Jackie. This has been really, really amazing. It's too bad co-host Richard Freeman and fellow cryptozoologist isn't here to talk to you, but I'm sure we will have you back again at some point, since you are local to Exeter and you are in the studio with me as we speak. So it's a definite bonus. Your stories have been truly, truly fascinating. I really wish you luck in your future expeditions, and take a really good camera, because I want to see some conclusive footage one of these days. So I hope if you do see one, that you do also happen to be holding like a really good digital camera.
Definitely, yeah. And I think the GoPro, is going to be one of the things that's most likely to get it. It's an equipment that can handle, quick movement. I think I'll be definitely using one of those the next time.
Well, sounds good. We'll definitely be looking forward to that when it happens. And as I said, have you back on the show again sometime soon. Join us again next week for Emma Dark, a horror film actress, and we'll be talking to her about horror films. Richard should also be back by then and giving us some new weird news. Jackie, do you want to tell us a little bit about the last two songs which we're going to play tonight?
Yeah, the next one is from a Mongolian singer. I'm going to very much try to pronounce his name. I'm probably not getting it right. It's Okna Tazayan Zan, I think. Zam. And it's Journey in the Steppes, the Mongolian Steppes, and it's, I think, Davor Shalzen. But
did you say that you met him in the Phoenix?
Yeah, I actually met him in the Phoenix.
Which is
an evening of 3 throat singers in the evening, and he's one of them. Absolutely amazing guy, one of the top Mongolian throat singers. I think it's a very haunting type of music. I also do Mongolian throat singing myself. and obviously it's the area where the Almasti comes from, so it's quite interesting to me. And also, of course, not to forget that you don't have to travel hundreds of miles to look for mysteries. Dartmoor, and I think Seth Lakeman, a great local musician. I think the Kitty J song is a good one to finish on, because there's meant to be sort of hauntings around the Kitty J grave, and not to forget there's local stuff under the Corthie and the Beasts of the Moors, so there's always something to look for locally.
Well, thank you very much, Jackie. Thank you everyone for listening. You've been listening to Exe Files on Phonic FM 106.8. Broadcasting from Exeter, but also available online at www.phonic.fm in case you want to listen online. Eventually we will have a website, and we will be having some archives up there, so you'll be able to listen to all the earlier shows which you may have missed. Join us next week, and here we go. Some last little bits of music from Bigfoot Hunter Jackie Tonks.
Yankılsaksın sen ile yoldan tımırım ben. Ankılsaksın sen ile yoldan tımırım ben. Abi ile dörbün göbüne otkın koracın oldun ile harvun nemte bol hakikat amalan aldı derdime. Harvun nemte bol hakikat amalan aldı derdime. Gülen ile dümbür ile doracın oldun güvengine. Derdin kükün bol hakikat amalan aldı derdime. Derdin kükün bol hakikat amalan aldı derdime. Segele derdime Baka genele biçkin genele Doracın oğuldan güven genele Bavan bol hakikat Yallahım olan kaldı derdime Bavan bol hakikat Yallahım olan kaldı derdime Amana genele kalsın 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 Genele kalsın genele merak etme genele Yankılsaksın sen genele yoldan tımırım ben Ankılsaksın sen genele yoldan tımırım ben Amana genele kalsın genele merak etme genele Yankılsaksın sen genele yoldan tımırım ben Ankılsaksın sen genele yoldan tımırım ben Abi genele dörbün göbüne